More than half the year is gone, and the person you planned to be back in January never showed up, so your brain offers the fix. One big push. Wake up at 5, cut everything, sprint until the last few months make up for the rest. But that exact fix was tested by an entire country for decades, and it failed so reliably the Russians had a word for it. There's a method that works instead. It takes 30 days, and one mistake in the middle ruins it for almost everyone. I'll show you exactly where it is. Walk into a Soviet factory in the first week of any month, and the strangest thing about the place is the quiet. Machines sitting still. Workers standing around, waiting on materials that haven't shown up yet. The second week picks up a little. Then the last 10 days arrive, and the whole building explodes. Double shifts, managers shouting, people working around the clock, because the monthly quota is due and almost none of it is done. A typical plant turned out around 80% of its entire monthly output in those last 10 days. And the pattern was so universal that workers had nicknames for the 3 phases of the month. Spyachka, the hibernation. Goryachka, the hot time, and Likoratka, the fever. The official name for the whole disease was Shturmovshchina, storming. Now, what did storming actually produce? Junk. The stuff assembled during the fever was so unreliable that Soviet shoppers learned to check the production date on a product and pass on anything made after the 20th of the month. Sit with that for a second. An entire country quietly agreed that things built during the big heroic push were things you didn't want to own. Then look at your year, because it's the same chart. January was a fever, February through June was hibernation, and the plan you're cooking up right now, the giant redemption sprint, is just the next fever. You already know how it goes, because you've run it before. 3 brutal weeks, sloppy workouts, a half-finished project, then burnout, then guilt, then back to sleep until the next January. And none of that means you're lazy. You're running the exact production schedule that kept a superpower turning out radios nobody wanted to buy. And notice how good the sprint feels while you're planning it. That's the sneaky part. Planning the fever gives you a little hit of the redemption up front. Tonight. For free. Before you've done anything. The factory managers knew that feeling too. Every month they swore the next month would be different, spread out, calm, and every month the materials came late, and the fever came back anyway. And the part that should genuinely worry you is that the Soviet Union never fixed storming. Decades of decrees, campaigns, and punishments, and the binge and crash cycle outlived every leader who attacked it. So the instinct you're about to bet your comeback on has a track record, and the track record is decades of failure at national scale. But inside that same country there was a man who, as far as anyone can tell from his records, never lost a year. Not one, for 56 straight years. And his method looked so unimpressive on paper that when a famous writer finally described it, readers struggled to believe it worked. In 1916, a 26-year-old biologist named Alexander Lubishev started keeping a diary. Not a normal diary. There's nothing in it about his feelings. The entries look like this. Systematic entomology, 2 hours 15 minutes. Letter to a colleague, 40 minutes. Reading, 1 hour 10. That's the whole entry, every single day. He kept it through a revolution, a civil war, a world war, through new cities and new jobs, right up until he died in 1972. 56 years of records, and the people who later went through the diaries found his daily accounting was accurate to within minutes. In 1974, the writer Daniel Granin published a short book about him called This Strange Life, and Soviet readers didn't know what to do with it. Because the diaries showed something uncomfortable, Lubishev wasn't some tortured workaholic. He slept properly, took his walks, and answered every letter anyone sent him. He simply knew, with an accountant's precision, where every hour of his life was going. Time was the one thing he refused to guess at. He counted it the way you'd count money. Daily entries, monthly totals, a yearly summary, and then a plan for the next year built on real numbers instead of good intentions. Gronin tells how Lubishev could open the books and tell you what any month of his life had cost, down to the category. Ask him about last July, and he wouldn't give you a mood. He'd give you the hours. And here's what all that bookkeeping bought him. No single heroic year. Just 56 years in a row where the hours went where he pointed them. Which quietly added up to a mountain of scientific work, in his own field and 3 or 4 others he wandered into on the side. The man never stormed. He never had to. And buried inside that system is the answer to why your year feels wasted. Because a wasted year is almost never an empty year. You did things this year. You worked. You handled problems. You kept yourself and maybe other people fed and functioning. You learned things you can't even name yet. But none of it got recorded, so your memory compresses 6 unrecorded months into a single word. Nothing, and then shame fills in the rest of the picture. The year doesn't feel wasted because you did nothing. It feels wasted because nobody was keeping the books. You can't fix a number you never wrote down. Which is why the 30 days don't start with doing more. They start with 7 days of finding out where the time actually goes. And this first week is harder than it sounds. Days 1 through 7, you do exactly one thing. You track. Get a pocket notebook, or the Notes app if that's what's near you, and log your day in blocks in Lubishev's flat tone. Work, 3 hours. Phone, 90 minutes. Dinner, an hour. You can round, you can estimate, nobody is grading your precision. The one rule is no judgment words. You're not allowed to write wasted 2 hours like an idiot. You write phone, 2 hours, and you move on, because for these 7 days you're an accountant, not a judge. An accountant doesn't yell at the numbers. He just refuses to let them hide. If logging as you go feels impossible, do it Lubishev's other way. Twice a day, sit down for 2 minutes and reconstruct the hours since the last entry. Lunch and bedtime is a natural split. The entries get a little rougher and the method survives just fine because the point was never the precision. The point is that every hour of your day now has to answer to somebody, and that somebody is you, at bedtime, holding the pen. I'll warn you now about how the week feels. Day 2 feels pointless. Day 3 gets uncomfortable. Because the log starts showing you numbers you've been carefully not knowing, and one of them, probably the screen time one, is going to sting. Let it sting. That's the fog turning into a map. By day 7, you won't have a vague sense that the year got away from you. You'll be able to point at the leak in hours per day with a straight face. Nobody who does an honest week of this comes out saying I don't know where the time went. They come out saying, oh, there it went. But knowing where the leak is doesn't patch it. That's the second half of the method, and it's also where the mistake I promised you lives. Quick thing before we get to week 2. If this approach makes sense to you, the boring, count it up. No hype way of getting a life moving again, that's what this whole channel is, one Soviet method at a time. So hit subscribe, because you'll want the rest of the system. Okay. Week 2. From day 8 to day 30, you add one thing on top of the tracking. A norm. That's the Soviet word for a daily production quota. And you're going to set one for yourself on the single thing from your January list that actually matters to you. Not the whole list. One thing, and the size of the norm should almost embarrass you. 20 minutes on the business. 1 page of writing. 1 workout short enough to fit in a lunch break. The test for the right size is simple. You have to be able to hit it on your worst day. Sick, slammed at work, miserable, all 3 at once, and the norm still gets done. Then every day you do it, and you log it in the same ledger. 1 line. And what about the leak you found in week 1? You leave it alone. You're not banning the phone, you're not declaring war on anything. Because a war footing is just the fever wearing a different coat. You keep logging the leak next to the norm, and let the 2 numbers look at each other every night. For a lot of people the leak starts shrinking on its own the moment it has to sign its name in the book every day. Don't force it. Watch it. And somewhere around day 12, the trap opens. The norm starts feeling easy. Easy starts feeling like proof that you aimed too low. And you'll want to double it. That is the mistake. Nearly everyone makes it. And to see why it kills the whole method, watch the Soviets make it first. If you've been on this channel before, you've met Alexei Stakhanov, the miner who cut 102 tons of coal in one shift in 1935, 14 times his quota. The party made him a national hero overnight. And then it did what felt obvious. It looked at his number and raised everyone's norms to match the new possibility. In early 1936, quotas jumped across whole industries, and wages didn't move with them. The system didn't rise to meet the new numbers. It cracked. Ordinary workers came to hate the record setters, and some Stakhanovites got cursed out and even roughed up by their own crews. Foremen quietly sabotaged record attempts because the records wrecked their supply lines, and factories discovered the easiest way to meet a norm nobody could meet. They faked the reports. When the quota jumps to match a peak, nobody produces the peak twice. The ledger starts lying instead. You'll run the same experiment on yourself if you let it happen. You double the norm on day 14 because day 13 felt great. Then one bad Tuesday shows up, you miss the new number, and suddenly the ledger has turned into a judge. So you skip the log. Just for one night. And the moment you start hiding from your own books, the method is dead. Because the only fuel this system runs on is honest numbers. So the norm stays fixed, all the way to day 30. On the days you're on fire, sure, go past it. Log the extra, and the extra counts as a bonus, never as the new requirement. Peak days are weather. The norm is climate. Same rule from the other side. When you do miss a day, and across 3 weeks you probably will, you do not double up tomorrow to make it back. Doubling up is storming, the same disease at a smaller scale. And it turns tomorrow into a quota you'll dread. You write the miss in the ledger, plainly, norm, 0. And then tomorrow you do the normal norm. One honest 0 in a book full of ones does nothing to you. Hiding the 0, though, that's your ledger starting to lie, and you already watched where that road ends. Then day 30 arrives, and you do what Lubishev did at the end of every month of his adult life. You add it up. Total hours on the norm. Days hit, days missed. What happened to the leak, and whether it shrank once you could see it. The whole review takes about 10 minutes, and I want to be straight with you about what the totals will show. Not a transformed life. 30 days doesn't rebuild a year, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling a fever. What you're holding is something you haven't had all year, though, an honest month. Evidence in your own handwriting that you can decide something on paper and then watch yourself do it, daily, for 30 days. And now, only now, you're allowed to raise the norm. Because notice the difference. Raising the quota in the middle of the month because day 13 felt good, that's Stakhanov's bosses, running on excitement. Raising it at the end of a fully counted month, off the actual totals, that's Lubishev, planning the next year off the last one. He did that review 56 times in a row, and it's the reason a quiet biologist left behind a body of work that made a whole country ask where he found the time. If you want the full version of this, the norms, the ledgers, the review questions, the whole structure the way I'd actually run it, I put it in a short book called The Soviet Habits Handbook, and it's linked in the description. Everything in this video works without it. Tonight, all you need is a pen and the nearest piece of paper. One last thing about the year you think you threw away. Some evening in week 1, look back through your logs and notice what was actually in those days. The hours all went somewhere. They always do. The difference is that from now on, somebody's keeping the books. And you've seen for yourself what happens to time nobody's watching. You've got 5 months of this year left. Start the books tonight. And if the real problem is less the wasted months and more that you can't stop replaying them in your head, watch the next video. It's the 27-minute Soviet method for a mind that won't shut up, and it's on screen right now.